I spent my savings to buy a house for my sister, but she didn't invite me to housewarming party. Money can't buy respect, she said. Week later when I announced the sale house. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to let people walk all over me. I worked hard, saved my money, and made responsible decisions. I wasn't the type to throw my earnings away on people who didn't deserve it. At least, that's what I believed. But then came the relentless pressure from my parents. It started right after Melissa got married. My mom and dad sat me down, looked dead serious, and laid it out for me. Melissa and Nick need a house, my mom said, crossing her arms like it wasn't even a discussion. They're in a good financial position, Jeremy. It's time for you to step up for your family. I almost laughed at how casually they said it, like I should just nod and write a check. They don't need a house, I said. They can rent like everybody else. Mom scoffed. And waste money on rent? With a baby on the way? Dad chimed in. We don't have room for them here, and you know it. Either they move in with you or you help them out. Be a man about it. I shook my head. Not my responsibility. They should have thought about all this before they got married. That was my first mistake, thinking my refusal actually mattered. From that day on, they made it their personal mission to wear me down. Every single conversation revolved around the same guilt trip. Mom would text me long paragraphs about how family takes care of each other. Dad constantly reminded me that I was able to help while Melissa and Nick were just getting started. And Melissa? She never even asked me. She let our parents do all the work, as if she just expected me to do it. For a month, they pestered me. Calls at odd hours, surprise visits where they'd sit in my apartment and bring it up again and again. When I ignored my phone, they'd leave voicemails dripping with disappointment. Mom even cried once, saying, I raised you better than this. Finally, I broke. Not because I agreed with them, not because I wanted to, but because I was just so tired. Fine. You want a house? You got a house. I spent almost all my savings, $293,000, including repairs and furniture, on a place for them. It wasn't a mansion, but it was nice. Ready to move in. A backyard. A safe neighborhood for the baby they kept throwing in my face. I signed the paperwork, took care of everything. Legally, it was my house. But I had every intention of giving it to them as a gift. The last step was to give them the keys. But right before that, I had to leave town for a few days. While I was gone, my parents decided it was best not to wait. They gave Melissa and Nick the keys and let them move in without me. I didn't think much of it at first. When I got back, I stopped by to congratulate them, expecting at least a thank you. Instead, they barely acknowledged me. They were busy unpacking, moving boxes, setting up furniture. It was like I was a delivery guy who had overstayed his welcome. Nick barely looked at me. Melissa mumbled something about how they were still getting settled and didn't have time to chat. I stood there for a second, waiting, but nothing. No excitement, no gratitude, no offer to show me the house I paid for. I walked away, telling myself not to take it personally. Maybe they were overwhelmed. Maybe they were just busy. Maybe I expected too much. That was Monday. Then it was Saturday. I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw Melissa's post. A full-blown housewarming party. The place was packed. Friends, extended family, neighbors. And right there in the photos, my parents. The caption? Now we have our own place like all normal Americans. Life is easy. I wasn't invited. Something inside me snapped. I must have read that headline 10 times, feeling my blood pressure rise with each word. Now we have our own place like all normal Americans. Life is easy. As if they had earned it. Like they did it themselves. The party was in full swing, judging by the pictures. Tables full of food, drinks flowing, people laughing. A celebration. My parents were there, smiling, having a great time. Even distant relatives I hadn't seen in years were there. But me, the guy who paid for it all, was nowhere to be found. I clenched my fists so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to call Melissa right then and there, demand an explanation, ask how the hell she thought this was okay. But I didn't. I knew I'd just get some dismissive excuse or a fake apology. No, this wasn't something I was going to let slide over the phone. The next morning I drove to my house. Melissa opened the door, still in her pajamas, holding a coffee cup as if she had all the time in the world. "Oh," she said, blinking. "Did you text first? We're kind of dash." Why wasn't I invited? I cut her off. Her eyes flickered with something annoyance? Guilt? She took a sip of her coffee, as if she needed a second to think. "Jeremy, come on. It was just a little get-together. Small? Half the family was there. Mom and Dad were there. People I haven't spoken to in years were there. But not me?" She sighed as if I was being dramatic. "Look, we didn't think you'd be comfortable. It wasn't about you, okay?" I let out a sharp laugh. "Not about me? I bought this house, Melissa." Nick appeared in the hallway with his arms crossed. "Dude, it's just a housewarming. Don't make this weird." I ignored him. All I wanted was a thank you. You didn't even acknowledge me when I came over. You acted like I was some random guest. And now this? Melissa put down her coffee and tilted her head like she was explaining something to a child. "Money can't buy respect, Jeremy." I stared at her, trying to process what I had just heard. "What?" She crossed her arms. "You decided to buy this house for us. That was your choice. But that doesn't mean we have to bow down and worship you for it. Frankly, I think it's kind of pathetic. If I were you, I wouldn't have done it. I'd have some self-respect." I felt something snap inside of me. "So let me get this straight. You think I'm a loser for buying you a house?" She shrugged. "I mean, yeah. It's kind of sad. You're so desperate for people to like you that you threw away almost 300 grand on us. And I still don't respect you any more than before. If anything, I respect you less." Nick chuckled. I looked at him, then back at my sister. I took a deep breath and smiled. "You must have forgotten, or maybe you never bothered to check whose name is on the deed to this house." Melissa's face paled for the first time. Nick straightened. "Wait, what do you mean?" I stepped back toward the door. "I mean that you two better start packing. Because by the end of the week you won't be living here anymore." Panic flashed across their faces, but I didn't give them a chance to react. I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. Let's see how easy life is now. By the time I got back to my car, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Calls from Melissa. Calls from my parents. I ignored them all. I needed a moment to enjoy the thought of them scrambling as they realized their little fantasy was about to collapse. It didn't take long for the real collapse to begin. Barely an hour later, I was at home when I heard a loud banging on my door. I didn't even have to look, I knew exactly who it was. I opened it to see my mother standing there, arms flailing, eyes wide, as if I had just announced I was selling her kidneys. "You can't do this, Jeremy!" she screamed, pushing past me into my apartment. My dad followed, more quietly, but with the same look of disbelief. I shut the door behind them. "Actually, I can." "Where are they going?" my mother demanded. "You have a baby on the way. Do you even think before you act?" I crossed my arms. "You mean like they thought before throwing a party and not inviting me? Or before they called me a loser for helping them?" Mom waved her hand like that was irrelevant. "Melissa is your sister. And Nick is family now. You don't just take a house away from family." I laughed and shook my head. "That's funny. Because when you were pushing me to buy it, you made it pretty clear that it wasn't my house anymore. But now that I'm selling it, suddenly it's mine again, huh?" Dad finally spoke, his voice firm. "Son, let's be reasonable. You already spent the money. Just let it stay. What's done is done." I looked between them and realized something. They weren't mad at Melissa. They weren't mad at Nick. No, in their eyes I was the problem. I was the bad guy because I dared to stand up for myself. I shook my head. "No. I'm done being the family ATM. They are moving out this week, or they are dealing with a realtor. You're evicting your pregnant sister? Mom gasped, as if I had just admitted to committing a war crime. She did it to herself, I said. She could have been grateful. She couldn't have insulted me to my face. But she made it clear what she thought of me. So now she can find out. Mom turned to Dad. Say something. Dad sighed. Come on, Jeremy. Do you really want to create this kind of tension in the family? I stared at him. You created this. You and Mom were the ones who backed me into a corner, made me feel like I had no choice. Now that I'm taking back control, suddenly I'm being unreasonable? Mom's voice dropped to a deep, almost threatening tone. If you do this, you'll tear this family apart. I let out a breath, then looked her dead in the eye. Then consider it torn. She flinched as if I had slapped her. Dad clenched his jaw, but neither of them had anything else to say. I walked to the door and opened it wide. If you're done trying to make me feel guilty, you can go now. I have a house to sell. Mom cried as they left. Dad shook his head in disappointment. But I felt nothing. They had made me feel like I owed Melissa my life, like my hard-earned savings were just there to be handed over. But now they were about to learn a hard lesson. Melissa and Nick had a week. And I wasn't bluffing. It took less than 2 hours for Melissa to show up at my door. Not knocking like our mother had done, no, she had a different strategy. When I opened it, she was standing there looking pitiful. Red eyes like she'd been crying, arms wrapped around herself. If I didn't know her better, I might have thought she was genuinely sorry. Jeremy, please. I leaned against the doorframe. Please what? She sniffled. I know I said things I shouldn't have. I was just stressed. You know what pregnancy hormones are like. There it was. The poor pregnant woman card. I crossed my arms. So when you called me a loser and laughed at me for helping you, that was just hormones talking? She nodded quickly. Yes. I didn't mean any of that. I was just overwhelmed with the move and the baby and everything. You know, I really appreciate what you did for us. I tilted my head. Funny. You've never really said that before. Her lip quivered. You can't kick us out. We have nowhere to go. I shrugged. Not my problem. I'm sure Mom and Dad will take you in. Her face instantly darkened. They don't want us there. I raised an eyebrow. Then maybe you should ask them why they won't help you instead of expecting me to be your doormat. Melissa let out a frustrated breath. Okay, fine. You want an apology? I'm sorry, Jeremy. There. I said it. I remained silent, waiting. She blinked. What? Say what you're really sorry for. She hesitated. I'm sorry I didn't invite you to the party. And? She shifted uncomfortably. And, for saying those things to you. I nodded. And? Her jaw clenched. Jeremy, come on. I stared at her. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry that you need something from me now. But you're not sorry for using me. You're not sorry for treating me like garbage once you got what you wanted. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I smiled. You have 6 days left. I started to close the door, but she grabbed it. Wait. Just let Nick and I rent the house from you, okay? We'll pay you every month. That way we won't have to move and you'll still make money. I had to laugh at that. With what money? Nick can barely afford a tank of gas. And if you think I'm going to come after you every month for rent, you're delusional. Her face flushed red. I will pay you. You just have to trust me. I let out a slow breath. Like how you trusted me enough to invite me to your housewarming party? Or how you trusted me enough not to talk crap about me the second you moved in? Her eyes darted sideways. She had nothing to say. I took that as my cue and slammed the door in her face. Less than a minute later, my phone buzzed with a text from her. Melissa, I hope you know that selling the house doesn't make you any less of a loser. You'll always be alone, Jeremy. Enjoy your money. I grinned and put the phone down. We'll see if she still feels that way in a few days when she's carrying boxes back to Mom and Dad's house. When Saturday rolled around, I made it a point to stop by my house just to watch the show. Melissa and Nick were packing, their faces contorted in a mixture of anger and humiliation. Suitcases, boxes, random furniture, everything was being shoved into their beat-up car. My parents were there too, standing off to the side, arms crossed, looking just as angry. They weren't angry at Melissa. They weren't angry at Nick. No, all their anger was focused on me. I leaned against my car, arms crossed, taking it all in. Need some help? Melissa shot me a glare that could melt steel. Go to hell, Jeremy. I smirked. You sure? I mean, I helped you move in. Seems only fair that I help you move out. Nick slammed the trunk shut. This is bullshit. I shrugged. What else did you expect? He turned to me, face flushed. We're your family, man. Who the hell kicks out their own pregnant sister? I held up a finger. Correction, I didn't kick you out. I just reminded you that this house was never yours to begin with. Melissa scoffed. You think that makes you some kind of big man? You think you won? I tilted my head. I think I stopped being an idiot, if that's what you mean. Mom finally spoke up, her arms crossed so tightly it looked like she was holding herself back from lunging at me. I hope you're happy, Jeremy. I hope this was worth it. You humiliated your own sister. You turned your back on your family. I raised an eyebrow. No, see, that's where you have it backwards. You all turned your backs on me as soon as I was no longer useful. Dad muttered under his breath and shook his head. Pathetic. I laughed at that. Pathetic? You call me pathetic? I didn't beg and manipulate someone to buy me a house. I didn't throw a party in a house I didn't pay for and act like I deserved it. And I sure as hell didn't insult the one person who made it all possible. Melissa rolled her eyes. Oh my God, just shut up. You love playing the victim, don't you? I stared at her for a long second, then chuckled. You know what? I really don't. But I do love watching karma do its work. Nick kicked one of the packing boxes in frustration. This is so stupid. Agreed, I said. You two had a sweet deal. A free house. A fresh start. All you had to do was show a little common decency. But nope. That was too much trouble, huh? Melissa gritted her teeth. You're so petty. I shrugged. You're right. I am petty. But you deserve this. Mom stepped forward and shook her head. Melissa, Nick, let's just go. He's made his choice. Let him rot alone in his empty house. I grinned. Oh, don't worry. It won't be empty for long. I already have buyers lined up. That quickly shut them up. Melissa's face twisted. You're really selling it? Yep. Should be off my hands in no time. She opened her mouth, then closed it. There was nothing more to say. A few minutes later, they were gone, crammed into their car, heading back to Mom and Dad's. I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of their drama finally begin to lift. I had spent years being the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who could always be counted on. But today I was just me. A week after Melissa and Nick had been dragged back to my parents' house, my phone rang. I didn't need to check the caller ID, I already knew. I let it ring a few times, debating whether I even wanted to entertain whatever nonsense was coming next. But eventually I picked up. Mom's voice was sharp, cutting straight to the point. After everything you've done, you are not our son anymore. I blinked. Wow. No warm-up? No fake attempt at making me feel guilty? Just straight to you're dead to us? You think this is funny? She snapped. You humiliated your sister, you made her life harder while she's pregnant, and for what? Your own ego? You disgust me. I leaned back in my chair, shaking my head. Let's go over this again, just for fun. You and Dad forced me to buy them a house. They took it without a shred of gratitude. They threw a housewarming party and didn't even invite me. Then, when I asked why, Melissa called me a loser for helping her. So, I took back what was mine. And that makes me the bad guy? You abandoned your family, she hissed. I laughed. No, Mom. You abandoned me the second I stopped being useful. Silence. I could hear Dad in the background, muttering something to her, but she ignored him. I imagined they had planned out this whole call, expecting me to beg for forgiveness or feel some kind of guilt. But all I felt was free. I sighed, already bored of the conversation. Do me a favor and lose my number. And with that I hung up. I expected an immediate callback. Maybe more angry texts, a dramatic voicemail, some attempt at dragging this out. Nothing. That was unexpected, but I wasn't about to complain. After that, I did the last thing I needed to do. I sold the house. I could have held out for a better price, but I just wanted it gone. The place was a reminder of how much money I had wasted on people who would never appreciate it. So, I knocked 25% off the asking price, knowing it would sell quickly. And it did. Melissa and Nick must have seen the listing because 2 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. You're such a petty asshole, Jeremy. You could have let us stay. Instead, you threw money away just to prove a point. You'll always be a miserable loser. I stared at the message for a moment. Then I deleted it. No response. No anger. Just gone. Because the truth was, I did throw money away. I lost thousands of dollars. I lost my so-called family. I lost the illusion that people who share your blood will always have your back. But in return, I gained something far more valuable. I learned a lesson that most people take a lifetime to figure out. Never help people who don't appreciate it. Especially family. Because family is the one group of people who think they can take everything from you, and you'll just take it. Not me. Not anymore. From now on, I only take care of one person. Me.